Even though Donald Trump is by far the dumbest and most corrupt president in the history of this country, and despite the fact that he has been credibly and criminally indicted 4 times in 2023 alone, aggregate polling shows that he remains competitive with President Biden ahead of the 2024 election. And much of this is attributable to the fact that for whatever reason, many Americans believe that Donald Trump is mentally and physically more fit for the office than Joe Biden. But I want to remind everybody that that's simply not true based on the facts, and Democrats have to reclaim that narrative as we get closer to the election. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so some of this has come up before, but it is a recurring piece of bad news or bad perception that President Biden and his re-election campaign and the Democratic Party as a whole, since Biden is their leader, has to confront. We have to figure out a way to do this. The perception, according to poll after poll after poll after poll, is that comparatively, Joe Biden is mentally and physically unfit for office next to Donald Trump. And this is even a recurring theme in polls that are generally favorable to President Biden, right? So even in polls in which he pulls ahead of Donald Trump, there's still a large percentage of the American people which think that he's mentally or physically not up to the game. This is a problem because the facts don't reflect it. And we're going to discuss that in just a second, but perception matters more. Facts don't speak for themselves. If the perception is that Joe Biden is mentally and physically unfit for the office, and we don't correct that, we don't appeal to the facts, we don't make a persuasive case from the facts to reclaim that narrative, then it doesn't matter what the facts say, and this may very well jeopardize the president and his reelection efforts. So this is a recent poll from NBC News. They say, according to the poll, 74% of voters say they have major concerns or moderate concerns that Biden, at age 80, doesn't have the necessary mental and physical health to be president for a second term. And then when you compare it to Donald Trump, 34% say they have major concerns, but more say they don't have major concerns about Donald Trump's mental and physical fitness. And this is even if they find him more corrupt. This is even if they say he's stupid. This is even if they say he's an authoritarian or a fascist. For whatever reason, there is the perception that Donald Trump is simply mentally and physically more fit for the office. This defies the facts as we know them, okay? Joe Biden is 80. He's very old. He's an octogenarian. But it's not like Donald Trump is young. It's not like Donald Trump is even middle-aged. Donald Trump is very old by the same standard that we apply to Joe Biden. There's not 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years separating these two men. There's only 3 years. Donald Trump is 77. Joe Biden is 80. And then if we look at the facts surrounding them in terms of their physical health, which one of them looks to be in better shape? Well, Joe Biden bikes all the time. He does yoga. He does the calisthenics. He swims. He works out quite often. He's trim and he's fit. Donald Trump, doesn't diet the way Joe Biden does. He famously eats fast food, which may be very relatable to you and I and other Americans, but it's not like it's a beacon of dietary health. And the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is overweight. By many standards, he is obese for his size. Why do people think that that Donald Trump is physically healthier than Joe Biden? It defies the facts, the visible facts when we see these two men, okay? Then we get to the mental issues, or the question of mental issues. It's true that President Biden, again, is slower in terms of his speech than he used to be, than he famously was during the 2012 vice presidential debates when he went up against policy wonk and, P90X fitness guru Paul Ryan and cleaned his clock, right? There's no question that at 80, Joe Biden is in some sort of age-associated cognitive decline, the way that we would typically see among older people. But Republicans cast aspersions, say, he's riddled with dementia or he has Alzheimer's or anything like that. There's no evidence of that. We have a guy who has struggled with a stutter all his life, a speech impediment, a guy who has always been legendarily gaffe-prone, right? And because he shoots from the hip, rhetorically speaking. And some of these things have gotten more pronounced as he's aged. But he also can speak with a depth of knowledge about issues like domestic policy, foreign policy that Donald Trump has never been able to do. And furthermore, as I've mentioned to you before, go back and watch Donald Trump's interviews with Conan O'Brien, with Oprah Winfrey, with Larry King, or whoever else 10, 20, 30 years ago. He is experiencing the same thing. Donald Trump, believe it or not, was a wordsmith compared to the man who was bigly, believe me, tremendously, huge, all these like buzzwords and conversational, segues because he doesn't have the vocabulary to offer a substantive answer. He's declined in that respect too. And he never had the breadth of political, foreign, or domestic policy-related knowledge that Joe Biden has had. And if we want to talk about gaffes and misspeaking, well, we've got some clips I want to play here, again, as a reminder of the many, many gaffes and misspeakings and malapropers and malapropisms that have plagued Donald Trump over the years. Let's roll the tape.
I wish covered the oranges, how it started. In the failing New York Times by an anonymous, gutless coward. They sacrifice every day for the furniture and future of their children.
Jim Apple.
Mike Pounds.
I know words. I have the best words.
Yosemite, Nambia.
Thailand.
You have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. The Democrats. Ooh, there was a mosquito. I don't want mosquitoes around me. I'm a very stable genius. The disinfectant, where it knocks it out in 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection? I tested positively toward negative, right? Thank you, everybody.
And there's another minute and a half. David Pakman put out a good compilation of this like a year ago as well. But we are inundated with examples, even in our short-term, political memory, of times that Donald Trump said the wrong thing, said something stupid, he would say things like, when describing a hurricane, it's one of the wettest on record in terms of water. He would look again into an eclipse, which could potentially blind him. He was talking about nuking hurricanes as a way to stop them. He would say things like, that the Revolutionary War was fought over the airports, even though, the Wright brothers wouldn't make an airplane until like 130 years later. And here's the thing. We can all misspeak. We can all say something stupid. I consider myself exceptionally well-spoken, and I make right now. I stumbled over my words. It happens. But why are we not holding Donald Trump to the same standard to which we hold Joe Biden? I understand why Republicans won't do it. It's in their best interest to have an asymmetry of expectation. But the mainstream media plays into this, and the Democrats will not, for whatever reason, are refusing to try to reclaim the narrative. Certainly, they attack Donald Trump in their own way, his corruption, his various crimes. But I want to play you a quick clip from Pod Save America, one of my favorite political commentators as well, where John Lovett made the case that Democrats are playing this a certain way, and he offers an alternative. This is actually how Democrats should play it.
There's a lot of Democratic apparatus sort of finding the worst moments of Haley and Trump and Chris Christie and putting those out. But to our detriment, they're just about how they'll hurt the country and do such a bad job on policy and really on the substance. Great, covered. We've got to make him, it can't just be old versus crazy. It has to be old versus old and crazy. Yeah. And there just needs to be more of that. And we need to collectively stop hand-wringing all the time. We got to stop asking, why won't they talk about the fact that Donald Trump is old too? We've done that. Now we have to go out there and be part of helping to drive that too.
I mean, it's show not tell, just like Tommy said for Biden, but if you're on the Trump side too.
They're absolutely correct. Folks, I think, I don't know what it is. And listen, I'm not saying these are professional political operatives who are running these campaigns. Perhaps they have a completely relatable logic to why they are doing what they're doing, but they haven't expressed it to us, and so we're left to speculate. For those of us who are also relatively well-read and knowledgeable about politics, is something that I'm scratching my head over. I'm thinking to myself, why do you leave a line of attack unanswered, especially when you have the ammunition for it? It's not like Donald Trump is a beacon of physical and mental health in the prime of his life. He's none of those things. And for whatever reason, Americans find the notion of, undermining a candidate's physical and mental health persuasive, right? So instead of just saying, okay, well, that's their attack, we're covered on the substance. Yes, of course we're covered on the substance. We're on the left. We're Democrats. Substance is where we excel compared to the regressive right and the Republican Party. But there also has to be notions of style. There has to be these effective attacks, even if they're not substantive. Attacks on a person's age in many ways can be despicable. There's no question about it that you have to be careful, mindful of an ageist component, right? You don't want to be ageist. But it's also fair to worry at when the two leading candidates, or have questions when the two leading candidates of the two major parties vying for the most important office are of a certain age, right? It's okay to ask legitimate fact-based questions. But Republicans aren't doing that. They're going overboard. They are going out of their way to spin Biden's gaffes into allegations, unproven, unsubstantiated allegations of dementia, whereas Democrats don't go far enough. They're back here saying we're just never going to address the fact that, Donald Trump is a physically and mentally unfit 77-year-old. We're just going to focus on the fact that he's, super corrupt. How about do both? Especially when clearly there's a cohort of Americans who are concerned about mental and physical, fitness. Don't just, refer to spirituality. Donald Trump is morally unfit for office. We're not going to worry about the physicality or the mental component. We're just going to make the case that he is, legally, either be it because of his many criminal indictments or the 14th Amendment, and morally because of his, numerous acts of corruption, that he's unfit for office. Republicans are actually offering a more multifaceted view. They're saying Joe Biden is mentally unfit for office, physically unfit for office. They're also saying he's morally and legally unfit for office by making the case, as baseless as it is, that he engaged in acts of corruption in the Hunter Biden scandal. They're basically, as Steve Bannon, deranged Republican strategist famously said, they're flooding the zone with feces. They're just throwing stuff out there and hoping something sticks. Maybe Democrats should start doing that too, especially when they have the facts on their side. Maybe we should be making the case, all of us, you and I, Donald Trump is morally unfit for office. He's legally unfit for office. He's spiritually unfit for office. He's physically and mentally unfit for office. Everything that you think about Biden, Trump is actually worse in that same respect, and we have more facts by which to prove it. I'm hoping Democrats pursue this line of inquiry, or if they won't, that somebody will explain to me why.